Thank you for joining. We'll wait for some time to allow all participants to join in. The webinar will begin in some time. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping checks. If you can hear me clearly, I request you to please type yes in chat box window. Throughout our presentation, we encourage you to interact with our speakers by typing in questions and comments using the question pane. We will try to answer as many questions as possible in our question and answer section, which after the presentation. I'm seeing a couple of yes, so I'm audible. So let's begin our presentation. First of all, on behalf of Virtualization Systems, a warm welcome to all of you and good morning and good afternoon. I am Bhavesh Rawal, Associate Architect at Virtualization Systems and your host for today. Here's a brief introduction to me. I have around 9+ years of experience under my belt in design and development of enterprise systems with proficiency in various Microsoft technologies such as ASP.NET, WCF, MVC, SQL Server 2008 and other Microsoft technologies. I am also involved in software architecture design and model from time to time, play the role of technology representative for the Virtualization Technology Forum. I am pleased to welcome you for today's webinar, How Cloud Can Transform Your Startup. Let me introduce my colleague and fellow speaker for today's session, Samir Sheikh. Samir is an associate architect at Virtualization Systems, having around 12+ years of experience in design and development of enterprise systems across multiple domains like healthcare, human capital, banking, and remittance. With proficiency in various Microsoft technologies such as ASP.NET, MVC, WCF, SQL Server 2008, and other Microsoft technologies, Samir, like me, is a technology representative for Virtualization Technology Forum, which provides technical solutions across projects. So, without further ado, let's start the session. So let's look at agenda for today's session. Many startups struggle in their initial days. The common problems faced are related to infrastructure, technology, finance, and with this webinar, you will get a basic idea on how cloud can overcome this problem. In today's webinar, we will get a basic idea of how cloud computing can benefit the business of startups, and with the architecture of cloud computing and cloud present scenario and future trends. We will also put lights on key success factors of a startup with some business case studies. We'll also discuss on how you can evaluate your application for cloud readiness and best practices and some design approach for cloud. So I will start. I will say cloud is not evolution, it's a revolution in IT industry. 1950 was era of mainframe computing. We are introduced to share a single processor and storage unit for multiple users. In 1970, a concept of virtual machine was introduced. Virtual machine with operating system brought the revolution in information technology industry. 1990, the concept of load balancing and use of physical device in the shared mode was introduced and was used with many Web 2.0 applications and is also being used for scalability solutions. In 2000 onwards, era of cloud computing was started. Early in 2005, Amazon and Rackspace were the early cloud-based providers. In 2008, Google has entered into the cloud computing, and in 2010, we have seen Microsoft Azure as well entering into the cloud computing market. Now let's see what is exactly a cloud computing. There are a lot of definitions for cloud computing, but to make you understand in business and less technical terms, let's see with the problem and the solution way of cloud computing. So problem is, how can a company's application be scalable and have high availability? To achieve this, along with the developing the application, you must also have an infrastructure that can support them. For example, you may need to add a server or increase the capacity of existing one and have redundant hardware. Add logic to the application to handle distributed computing and add mechanism to handle failover. You have to do this even if the application is high demand for only short period of time. Life becomes even more complicated when you start to consider issues such as network latency and security boundaries. So cloud basically will solve you all the problems which above I have mentioned. And for me, the cloud is essentially a utility computing. Now why utility computing? Utility computing will readily available on demand like other utility services such as water, electricity, telephone and gas available in today's society. Similarly, users need to pay provider only when they access. Cloud is made up of interconnected servers located in the various data centers, and it is an automated services. By moving application to the cloud, you are giving up some control and autonomy. Pay per usage service are built as consumed, so it is kind of a renting infrastructure, runtime environment and services over the internet. It is accessible anywhere. I don't care where my servers are, who manages them, where my documents are stored or where my applications are hosted. I just want them always available and access them from any devices connected through internet, and I'm willing to pay for this service for as long as I need it. Elasticity is one of the key features of a cloud computing. When demand is high, you can scale up. When demand is low, you can scale down. Transition from capital expenses to operating expenses. The most evident benefit from the use of cloud computing system and technology is increased economical return due to reduced maintenance cost and operational costs related to IT, software and infrastructure. So what are the different services cloud offers? So there are 3 different services which clouds are offering. So first one is the software as a services. It refers to the service model in which on-demand software applications are provided over the internet. The applications are accessible from various client devices to either a thin client or a web browser or a native application. So common example I can see of a software as a services are the email services, Amazon SES email services, where or SMTP services, which directly you can send an email or receive an email. Salesforce for a SAP application, GoToMeeting, you can access GoToMeeting on internet directly. Microsoft Office 365. Think of like you want to buy a license copy of Microsoft Office, which is too costly, and having this as a services will cost you less. Various Google applications are SaaS-based applications. So SaaS are basically end user application which you can either consume it or use it from your application. The next model is PaaS model. PaaS is basically platform as a service. PaaS refers to providing platform layer resources such as operating system, development framework. Example of PaaS is database server, application development environment, complete development environment could be a PaaS model, automation or a load testing, operating system and a directory services. The next model is the infrastructure as a service. So in infrastructure as a service, it provides a capability to a consumer to provision on-demand processing, storage, networks and other computing resources via virtual machine. So usually when we see for the infrastructure, we go for a IaaS model, and it gives you a virtual server, a cloud on cloud, and application hosting environment as well. So these are the different services offered by a cloud. Now, if I see a high-level architecture of cloud computing with this model, it looks something like this. So for an end user, software as a services will be directly be accessed. Resource managed at each layer is like application. So the architecture of cloud computing consists of 4 layers basically: the hardware, data center layer, infrastructure layer, platform layer, and application layer. All these layers are loosely coupled with each other, and architectural modular nature provides support to the huge line of application requirement and also reduces management and maintenance overhead. You can make use either all the services offered by the cloud or some of them. So I see like majority of startups are opting for the cloud-based infrastructure. This is a current trend. And it's not just about the cutting costs. Leading enterprises are using cloud to innovate and create competitive advantages. Now, with the cloud computing, a startup can compete a large enterprise organization as well. AWS leads in the public cloud race. Interest is building for Azure and Google. Though Azure and Google has entered the cloud computing market little late, but yeah, they are gaining a good amount of customers. In terms of users and revenue, software as a service has the biggest share. Usually when the cloud was started, this was the first thing like people adopted, like the services on internet. And there were n number of services which are now SaaS based and n number of applications which you can use as a SaaS based application. Developers are flocking to the PaaS for their enterprise application. You can clearly see a Microsoft Azure is most successful with its PaaS model. Hybrid cloud is a popular choice for various applications which looks for the compliance or they want some data to be on-premise. Challenge of cloud security is abating. There are a lot of work being done on the cloud security. Initially there was an thing like will my data resides on the cloud, will be secured or not, but yeah, this is now abating. Next generation IT shapes up as cloud, day operation and self-service IT. So what is the future of cloud now? Gartner predicts a continued strong growth in the public cloud service with CAGR of 17% year on year through 2017. SaaS is rapidly gaining adoption in enterprise, leading Gartner to forecast that more than 50% of enterprises will have some form of SaaS-based application strategy. Highest growth rate is observed in the cloud infrastructure services as well. So with the graph which Gartner is showing, you can clearly see like in 2010 the software as a services was in highest in the race, but by 2016 and 17 infrastructure as a services is been also competing to the SaaS model. Forrester, another analyst firm, predicts cloud will generate greater revenue potential, which can clearly be seen from AWS and Rackspace. Up till now, we have seen about cloud architecture and trends. But how startup can leverage the cloud offering? So, Samir, can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, thanks, Bhavesh. So let's see how the cloud is making the shift in IT. With cloud computing, there is a fundamental shift in IT functions, and it's about the ability to move faster, more innovation, more efficiency, more quality, agility. So like 100 years back, if you want electricity, you had to build your own power station. Now you just plug stuff into your walls and you get the electricity. 10 years ago, if you wanted a big company, IT, you had to buy your own servers, install expensive softwares. Now, increasingly, you can access these services over the internet. This is a critical change for the small business because it gives them access to services that were too complex or too expensive before. So let's see the major areas where the startup benefits from the cloud environment. So there are two major areas like the economic benefits and the operational benefits. Now the total cost of ownership of developing, deploying and managing critical application in cloud is much less when compared with deploying the same resource on premises or in a hosted environment. So this is one of the major benefits the startup is getting. Another thing is the pricing model. For example, Amazon EC2 provides you several flexible pricing model options that can help you significantly reduce your overall IT cost, including on-demand instances, spot instances, and reserved instances. Whether your workload is variable or stable, reserved instances can save you up to 60% over on-demand instances. Plus, now with the trusted advisory services, your startups can grow lean and smart. So this trusted advisor which inspects your environment and makes recommendations when opportunity exists to save money by eliminating unused and idle resources or making commitments to reserved capacity. So trusted advisors, it's like your customized cloud experts, and it helps you provision your resources by following best practices. They are continuously inspecting your environment and finding opportunities to save on money, improve system performance and reliability. Then when you see operational benefits, it is majorly on the storage side. So for example, like for storage and data transfer, there are tiered pricing models. The more storage and data transfer you use, the less you pay per gigabyte. In addition, volume discounts and custom pricing are available to customers for high volume projects with unique requirements. So save more as you use more. Now another major benefits the startups will gain is the automation scenarios, where the companies are continuously doing some automation testing, some performance testing, and in this testing they require some sorts of test rigs, so that these test rigs will generate some load data for them. And these test rigs are with different configuration and they are composing different machines within them. There is a controller, you have n number of agents to be configured. So when you consider the overall expenses for these resources, so if you have them on premise, they are more. Now this model you can easily use in a cloud, and you can get a test rig, on-demand test rig. So you can create your own test rigs with your own configuration and use it as whenever it is required. So typically a company will do a load testing on a project on a weekend, where freely they can put more load on the production, or they can do it on the off cycles. So whenever the hardware is required, you pay at that moment. Also the hardware configuration can be scaled up and down as per the load testing requirements. With tests with different hardware and network configuration can be performed easily. So this is one of the major benefits which we are seeing. Plus, it is like the global becoming standard. So small businesses can expand global infrastructure to help customers achieve lower latency and higher throughput. and to ensure that that data resides only in the region they specify. For example, data of European Union should not be stored outside EU boundaries. So cloud providers can help you select storage and clouds which are within the EU boundaries. So by using the providers, the clouds, you are getting that global standards with the same price of your other resources. So these are the major startup benefits which you can get. So Bhavesh, can you throw some light on this with some case studies?
Yeah, thanks Amir. Like yeah, before that we will see like various startup programs, like how when we say a startup, we look at the cost as well, right? So with Amazon Web Service, there is AWS Activate program for startups where you can save some amount of money, and there are a lot of different trusted advisors which will help you to optimize your cost. IBM has a soft layer. Google Cloud Platform, it has a Cloud Platform pack, a startup pack favorable for startups. There is a Microsoft Azure Bespark program, which is one of the oldest and popular among the technology startups. Rackspace is one of the early cloud service providers to offer special package for startups. Cloud computing is helping enterprise, governments, public and private institutions, as well as research organizations, shape more effective and demand-driven computing systems. These are some of the case studies which might map to your business problem. So let's see the first case study, which is for a startup company. A small size startup that needs to develop, monitor, manage its internal system. For example, publishing company that creates video out of images, music and video fragments submitted by users. The process involves a considerable amount of storage, backend processing required for producing the video. Challenge is the company does not have its own IT team. IT information technology knowledge is minimal. So solution for this scenario will be a company decides a managed service model based on cloud. Company does not own a single server and bases its computing infrastructure entirely on Amazon Web Services, which is sized on demand according to the overall workload to be processed. Such workload can vary a lot and require instant scalability. Upfront investment is clearly not an effective solution, and cloud computing system becomes an appropriate alternative for this type of case. By handling over responsibility to third party, startup benefits from lower capital cost, no IT personnel recruited, no new hardware software required, no licensing issues. The company is not distracted from focusing on its core responsibility and growing a business. Let's see the other model, which is a hybrid model in the cloud. A situation is like a manufacturing company that mostly uses Microsoft technology and the tools, so has some legacy system built on other platforms. Developers are knowledgeable only for Microsoft technologies. A significant portion of company's IT budget is allocated to maintaining application on-premise server. And yeah, like there are certain data which has to be reside only on premise, which is very critical and secure data. Deploying new on-premise application takes too long. Infrastructure is used inefficiently because there are too many applications deployed on-premise than for an IT personnel to see which application is using how much amount of resource. It's very difficult for on-premise. Even company has to follow compliance and standard, and also does not want to keep secure data onto cloud. Company wants performance and scalability solution for better customer experience. In this model, a company opted for hybrid cloud model, which solved all previously mentioned problems. having some data on-premise like Active Server directories, which has all the information of the employees of the company, then some secure data which has some compliance issues will be on-premise, and all other data will be on the cloud. As we have seen, like cloud help us not to think much on operational and economic stuff and allow us to think more on efficiency and innovation in our product. So can you explain with this with case study?
Yeah. So we'll move to the idea generation case study. So the situation over here is like me, which decides upon the branding and identifying for a new product. It creates dozens of alternatives and picks the best of them for testing and refinement. Generating the raw ideas that feed subsequent development process plays a critical role in innovation. So the challenge over here is a small business company needs to compete with larger enterprises in developing custom B2B products and enterprise applications for web and mobile at a rapid pace, yet at a fraction of cost involved so far. So this seems to be a big challenge. Now the solution here comes with the passport. So platform as a service allows the developers to develop, test and deploy their software in a comprehensive environment. So now the developers are building on the same machine, and they are building for the same operating system and same environment where they will be publishing it. So single platform environment frees the developer from the need to tailor the application to work on various operating system and hardware. So now the developer does not need to worry about the operating systems and the hardware which is going to come, like the traditional cycle of the developer machine, then the local environment, QA environment, then moving from stage, then production. So ready environment and continuous integration, like for example Azure has a continuous integration model inbuilt. So you build and deploy for a machine, and it is done with a continuous automation process. So this benefits the startups. Clients benefit from the zero overhead, keeping 100% focus on the product development and go-to-market. So the go-to-market cycles are comprehensively reduced over here, and small businesses can compete with the big enterprises, and they can put efforts on different products. Like they can at a time they can invest on doing some R&D or doing launching some products at a time. Like they can have multiple products they are working on them, and they are able to put it on the production. So the go-to-market cycle reduces comprehensively, and the startups get benefit of this. Bhavesh, can you so now we will see like how the cloud readiness. Now we can just see what do you mean by cloud readiness. So here we will be emphasizing on few of the questions and few of the processes where you see the cloud readiness. So now there are few pointers which represent the main aspects that anyone should be looking before embarking into migration of all or part of the application portfolio and processes into the cloud. It can be public, private or hybrid. So application readiness is the first thing we should ask. So is your app a web application? It is a basic question, but this should be answered. Then will it benefit from a multi-tenant architecture? Can it scale? Really need elasticity? So migrating legacy apps based on old technologies to a cloud-based infrastructure will not bring the right benefits, and a more traditional managing hosting solution would be a better bet. First, make an assessment to determine an application readiness for the cloud. So you should evaluate the readiness of all your key applications in a portfolio using a multidimensional analysis of cloud application characteristics. So this will provide clear recommendation on a suitable migration options. Readiness is another thing, like can they adapt with minimum changes to a cloud delivery infrastructure? And this is certainly the right time to look at streamlining internal and external process to boost productivity and lower cost with or without the cloud. Then do you use any interop or other technologies? So if you do use any interop, it is important to make sure that those technologies are also supported by the clouds you are targeting. Then data types. What data type do you use? So here it is like when you are planning to migrate, make sure that the target cloud can support the databases which you are using. The application, hardware, the operating system, everything else can be owned by the cloud provider. But the data is what is your intellectual property and is protected upon, and has to be acknowledged that you can take that data away with you as you see fit. So your cloud subscription gives you access to the functionality of the application or function that you use. If that access is removed, can you still access the data so that you can take it away with you? So make sure that contract allows you for access to the backend data either directly or via the provider offering an export capability. Then you have to make sure with the different management and monitoring tools you are getting. Cost assessment is another major thing. So costs are an important factor when considering migrating to the cloud. Explore whether you can optimize your cost. For example, what are the payable elements on this specific cloud, and will you be able to optimize those elements to maintain the lowest possible cost? Some providers will try to scare you away with the cloud with forewarnings of high cost. But there are cost-effective ways to use the cloud. Then security is another major thing. So there are two steps. First, review the provider's regulation and trust level. Second, know that what security hazards can be created, making the client available from any PC that is connected to the web. Then compliance is another thing which you need to look into. So organization considering using cloud services should perform a gap analysis between the specific requirements identified in relevant regulation and set of controls provided by the cloud service provider. So closely review contracts and service level agreements and understand how the cloud service meet your specific compliance requirements. Then migration strategy is one of the important things. So defining a migration strategy involves understanding the various migration options available, establishing business priorities, and evolving a strategy that offers a fine balance between cost and meeting business priorities. So enterprises have the options with a cloud infrastructure, whether it is private or public. For example, the migration strategy is the databases. Like suppose you are using the SQL Server database in your in-house or on-premise, and then you have to define a strategy like what you will be using in the cloud. Whether, for example, you are using the Azure SQL, so you have to make sure your SQL Server migration plan is in place. So again, there are different tools which can be used, like the BCP utility, Management Studio tools, where you can use them effectively for migration. So these are few cloud readiness questions. Bhavesh, can you put some light on the development best practices so that we can summarize this session?
Thanks, Samir. Yes, when you are planning to move existing application to cloud, you will check for all the cloud readiness which Samir has discussed, and it will have totally a different strategy. But designing application for cloud, will have overall different approach and thinking. For cloud architect, the first and foremost is to think on best design, which will utilize appropriate hardware and also computation needs. It is critical to build a scalable architecture in order to take advantage of scalable infrastructure. We all know cloud is distributed in nature, and it can be used, the hardware and software can be on demand increased. So to have the scalability in picture with the cloud will definitely help any organization. Cloud provides you a scriptable infrastructure, auto-scaling architecture, good disaster recovery solution. So while starting with any application, think on how well you can design application which could be scalable. So definitely when we say design, before the design, you have to think like which model fit best for you. Whether it is the infrastructure model as a deployment, or it is a platform as a service model, or a software as a service. So let's say if you are developing some application and you have, a SQL a storage requirement, then probably I will say a PaaS Microsoft Azure storage will be a best suit for you. If you have just virtual server requirement where you want a Linux kind of hosting on Apache, then the infrastructure as a service will be the best suit for you. If you are looking for some kind of services, then the SaaS will basically fit best for you. There are various data storage options, and in the cloud, various whether you are going to store data as a table storage or a relational database or a NoSQL or a file storage or a blob storage. So you will get a varieties of options in the cloud for that, and out of that you can use any of them. So for normally when we say data storage, and if you are going for some relational database, then you don't have to pay a licensing cost in the cloud. You need to apply some design patterns specific to the cloud. Microsoft Press has published one good book which is cloud-based design pattern, and it covers a lot of good design patterns where you can apply for the cloud. Basically this is for the scalable architecture, like normally when you have a cache requirement, when you have a failover requirement or a replication requirement or a multi-cloud architecture. So you can apply various design patterns for a cloud. In a cloud, think everything is a service. Use RESTful APIs. Try to always use the RESTful APIs, because this will help you to have the integration with a native mobile application or a native application becomes very easy. And in the native application, some development is done on the framework side, and it calls the cloud API to fulfill the cloud need or storing a data in the cloud. For a cloud, if you are looking at a scalable architecture, then definitely you need to decompose application into logical components. Your application cannot be as in one, or else you will not get good performance benefit, and your application will be something like you are deploying only on a single server. So the recommendation is always decompose application into logical components, have application tier and a presentation tier separated, and even on the database side, do a database sharding. Cloud help you for the partitioning of a database. Different database approaches are there. With the help of a cloud, you can do this all the stuff. Whenever you say a cloud, then the application technology choice, based on a technology, you can select a specific cloud provider. A cloud has a load balancing and auto scaling strategy. Like if you have got a 10 web roles, then with a load balancer you can deploy your application, and your application will be scalable and performing better. A stateless web server, don't keep sessions on a cloud on a single server. Have some centralized or storing a session. Try to use a distributed cache and have a security at every layer. Identify a strategy and approach to the cloud. There are various things in the cloud. When you say cloud, there are different types of cloud hosting: a public, private, community, enterprise, or hybrid. Now, which suits best for you? So, if you want some data onto hybrid, in a hybrid model, if you want some data to be on premise, then hybrid model deployment, you need to think on that. You also need to think on the data synchronization between a cloud and on-premise. If you are thinking like you will have a private cloud and a public cloud combination, there also it is also kind of an hybrid model. So you need to design a deployment model for your application. Design for taking care of failures. So you have to, like cloud has a definitely good high availability solutions, good disaster recovery solutions. So like if you, let's say on a database side, if you want a failover clustering needs, then in the cloud these services are readily available and you can use it, and you just need to configure it properly for making your application run with high availability solution. Compute partitioning. So many times happens like whenever you are deploying your application, you need to do a cost calculation about your infrastructure, your core, your hardware, what you are using, the storage, and there is something called as alerts. Like if some hardware, if you are not using it, you will get alerts of that. If some hardware is being used, is consumed extra, then alerts will be there, and there an auto scaling facility. With auto scaling facility, the performance could get improved. There are various things on the database side also you can do with the data consistency. If there is multiple cloud architecture, then a data consistency and data partitioning has to be taken care. A data synchronization and replication will also come into picture. There is one of the good thing in the cloud services which you can see is for instrumentation and telemetry. So many times for your application, you want to see various logs, various events, and various web analytics. So a cloud provides you that. Many of the cloud providers have good web analytics, and you will get online information about how your server is performing, how much load is there on your server, and if you want to increase hardware based on the analytics, you can increase hardware as well. Automate everything. Try to use continuous integration. Try to take automate build, and also try to see if you can have automate test applied using the cloud path model. So these are some of the deployment diagrams what we have got from the right scale. But you can design it the way you want it to be designed. So this is kind of a single server architecture, like everything like web server, application, and database is been deployed on the single server, and the cloud also takes care of backup and all those stuff. So so many times a startup, when we are doing some POC, or it is in the when we are having the minimal viable product development, then you can think of this as a single server. You can deploy it, you can test it, and once your application grows, you can add another server and load balancer and many more stuff. Then there is something called as an auto scaling architecture. In auto scaling architecture, one of the key benefit of the cloud is ability to horizontally scale. So you can add n number of servers and scale your application based on the user load. You can use server arrays to set up a particular tail of your architecture to auto scale based on the predefined alert condition as well. Auto scaling is most commonly used for the application tier of your cloud reference architecture. So another is a failover multi-cloud architecture. When you are designing your cloud system architecture across the multiple clouds, there are several factors that you will have to take into consideration. In the example below, there is a running slave DB server that's serving as a worker, but it's replicating data with a master DB across the public, not private IP address. Remember, only server with the same cloud infrastructure can communicate over a private IP address. However, if there is ever a problem or a failure that will require you to switch cloud, multi-cloud architecture will allow you to easily migrate your site. So this does not end like you can have n number of cloud architecture, because cloud is providing you an scalable infrastructure and on-demand infrastructure. Be specific. If I'll be specific, it is providing you on-demand infrastructure. So summarizing our presentation, this is the right time for startups to outperform the big players by leveraging their cloud offerings. In our presentation, we have seen a lot of case studies and a lot of cloud offerings, how you can map it to your business requirements and can have your product to be perform well in the market, and don't think much on the infrastructure. There are varieties of cloud model available for different business solutions. One should have an understanding of one business requirement and map it with the offerings provided by the cloud provider. A good technology partner like Habinger, who maps your business requirement with the cloud offering, is need of today. Thank you. We will be taking questions from audience now. I remind you once again, if you have any queries, please type in the question pane. If due to time constraint we are not able to cover you in today's session, we will definitely send you a question answer document and covering answers to all questions raised today. So yeah, we have got, here is our first question. So question is like, the company is developing a product and thinking of scalable architecture using cloud with requirement of 10 GB of SQL Server instance, 10 web servers, 2 application servers. What will be the approximate cost or capital amount the startup company has to invest per month? Also, which cloud providers will be best in this case? So answer for this is like a strategy of selecting a providers vary from organization to organization. Based on your architecture, you need to use a calculator of a different providers and compare it. So different providers have a different cost calculation mechanism. You have to do definitely, you have to identify a strategy for this and try to evaluate that strategy based on that. For web and middle tier, AWS and Azure or any other product will cost nearly the same. That's my experience. But for Azure SQL storage, which is a PaaS-based cloud service cost, it will cost less than other providers because the licensing cost is being saved over here. And as per your requirement, it might cost you somewhere $1,400 to $1,500 per month for whatever the instances like you have mentioned in your question, without any licensing cost. You can also get a trusted advisor to optimize your cost and also get benefit by using different startup programs. Also make sure if you have any interop and providers which you choose are supporting that.
Okay, so we have one more question I will just repeat it. How can we do performance monitoring while using public cloud, and does cloud provide us inbuilt performance solutions? Okay. So here now most of the cloud providers are providing portal login where you can diagnose your site. These portals have inbuilt web analytics and performance monitoring tools. So you can access various and log through this UI. So the common, most frequently used is in the Azure case, we have the Azure portal login where you can administer your entire site. And in fact, you can have multiple sites where you can monitor this, and you can have performance counters placed for individual web servers, and you can directly from the portal UI, you can see the various counters, CPU utilization, memory usage, everything. And also there is an auto scaling architecture, like in case your hardware gets, in this case your hardware gets automatically added. So you have to define a trigger, and you have to tell the portal your reserved instances. And in that trigger, if you define, like when a system loads is using your entire memory, or you are using your available, for example, 128 MB RAM, then there is a trigger, and this trigger automatically adds hardware to your resources. So this is the auto scaling architecture. So you can do good amount of performance monitoring and troubleshooting using these portals.
Yeah. So due to time constraint, this is the last question for the day. Suppose the question is like, suppose my clients are not willing to share their data on public cloud. In that scenario, what sort of strategy do you propose? It is recommended for any secure data or financial data which could not be shared over the cloud. In that case, hybrid model could be beneficial. Have some data onto the on-premise, like we have shown in our case study, and think on the data synchronization with the cloud, and that could solve your security problem. Thank you. Today's webinar has been recorded, and everyone will receive email with a link to view a recording. Finally, I request you to please fill in the short feedback survey form that will pop up on your screen once you exit the webinar. It won't take long, but will surely provide us important insights on how to improve and what topics to choose from. With this, we conclude today's session. Once again, thank you all for joining us, and have a great day.